I'm just like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I know that one day, hopefully, I'll get out of this town. I'll get out of this like whole thing. Like I'll get out of the situation I'm in.
Hey there, my name is Sean, and this is Suicide Noted. On this podcast, I talk with suicide attempt survivors so that we can hear their stories. Every year around the world, millions of people try to take their own lives, and we almost never talk about it. We certainly don't talk about it enough. And when we do talk about it, many of us, including me, we are not very good at it. In fact, a whole bunch of us suck at it, and that matters. So one of my goals with this podcast is to have more conversations and hopefully better conversations with attempt survivors, in large part to help more people in more places hopefully feel a little less shitty and a little less alone. Now, if you are a suicide attempt survivor and you'd like to talk, please reach out. hello@suicidenoted.com, on social media @Suicide Noted. If you'd like to help us out, you can rate and or review this podcast. It helps people learn who we are and what we do and actually find it when they search for things around suicide or related topics. So if you have a moment, do that. Thank you. And of course, if you'd like to learn more about the podcast, you can check the show notes. And more specifically, I mean our membership, our Suicide Attempt Survivor Support Circle, as I call it, on the app Signal, volunteering, sponsoring, and other ways in which you and I could potentially collaborate with speaking or programs or who knows what. So check that out if you're curious to learn more. A few other notes. One, I just recently learned, thanks to Spotify, that Suicide Noted has been heard, according to their data, Suicide Noted has been heard at least once in our more than 4 years now in 112 countries. And you know what I'm going to do right now? I'm going to list those countries in order, so you can skip ahead maybe a minute if you don't want to hear it. But if you're somebody out there in one of these countries, I want you to know I appreciate it. Here we go. The United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Australia, Philippines, Germany, Netherlands, New Zealand, South Africa, Ireland, India, Malaysia, Finland, Sweden, Poland, Norway, Turkey, Lithuania, Mexico, Switzerland, Brazil, Romania, Indonesia, Kenya, Denmark, Estonia, Israel, Latvia, France, Singapore, Spain, Bosnia and Herzegovina. I had to say that 3 times. Sorry, that's a tough one. Mauritius, Slovakia, Hong Kong, Czechia, Nigeria, Hungary. Are you getting tired yet? Because I'm just getting rolling. Belgium, Malawi, Jamaica, Austria, Ecuador, Serbia, Taiwan, Thailand, Portugal, Greece. 74 listeners or streams from unknown, not a country I've heard of. Moving on, Japan, Egypt, Luxembourg, Italy, Vietnam, Zambia, Argentina, the United Arab Emirates, Morocco, Rwanda, Saudi Arabia, Colombia, Russia, Bulgaria, Nepal, Dominican Republic, Uruguay, Maldives, Tunisia, Paraguay, Costa Rica, Cyprus, Ghana, Peru, Mongolia, Iceland, Botswana, Zimbabwe, South Korea, Chile, Algeria, Malta, El Salvador, Trinidad and Tobago, Croatia, Qatar, Andorra, Bahrain, Brunei, Montenegro, Uzbekistan, Namibia, Antigua and Barbuda, Armenia, Bolivia, Bahamas, Lebanon, Ukraine, Mozambique, Oman, and Guatemala. And for our final 12, they have only had 1 stream, but you matter just as much. And here we go. Albania, Barbados, Jordan, Bhutan, Slovenia, Cambodia, Eswatini, Kuwait, Tanzania, North Macedonia, Fiji, and finally, Panama. Thank you, all of you. I realize I'm not thanking countries as much as people who live in those countries, of course. I really appreciate it. And remember, wherever you are, we are talking about suicide on this podcast, and I do not hold back, so take that into account before you listen or as you listen. But I do hope you listen, because there is so much to learn. Today I am talking with Luna. Luna lives in North Carolina, and she is a suicide attempt survivor.
Hey, Luna.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, you?
Pretty good, I suppose. So what brings you here today?
I guess we're gonna talk about suicide.
Not usually a subject people laugh about, but we can if we want, because I guess we could just do whatever we want.
I don't try and hide it.
How did we find each other? You must have, I imagine, stumbled upon it listening to podcasts?
Yes, actually. I listened to it first probably like 2 years ago at work. Then I sort of rediscovered it this year.
Did you look for it or listen to it because you yourself are or have been suicidal?
Yes, yes.
That makes sense. That's most people, I think that's what happens. Let me ask you a weird question. Are you suicidal right now?
Not actively. Like I still have like thoughts all the time, but I don't want to just do anything to hurt myself.
You realize that I'm not somebody that's going to report you.
I know.
Okay. Just saying some people might forget that because
No,
we get used to lying, right? We have to. What compelled you to reach out and want to talk about it so other people hear you?
I've always told it's like my past to like other people, and they've always been really interested in it. So, and I thought, why not try and share it with more people?
All right. For our listeners, Luna and I are locals in North Carolina, and you're not. Maybe you are. Probably not. Statistically unlikely, other than a handful of people are local.
I'm actually from Nevada. I've only been here since this December.
Oh, okay. Why the move?
It's quite a story. So I was going to university. I went to university in Las Vegas, and then a lot of financial aid just gave up. I went pretty far into debt with the school. Still am. Basically, it was either I move out here or I become homeless. So
Good move. So you're not homeless, fortunately.
I'm not. I am very lucky to not be.
Right. Have you ever been homeless?
No, but I have been on the very edge of it.
But now you have a place.
Yeah, I actually live with my partner's parents.
Cool parents.
They are pretty nice.
Is anyone home right now?
I think her mom is home, and she's home in the other room.
But nobody can hear you.
No,
Nobody knows what we're talking about, right?
no. Some people know that I'm going on this podcast, like a couple people.
All right. So you share it with some people. They know
Yeah,
your life a little bit and what's going on. What's
yeah.
on. How many suicide attempts do you have?
Two really serious ones. I mean, they're all serious, but
Sure.
two that probably would have succeeded.
And how many others do you think are like not as quote serious, but scary?
Three others.
Okay. Let's talk about the more serious ones and then we can include the others a little bit. So how old were you for the first big one? I'm calling it a big one. You know what I mean, I think.
Yeah. The first time I actually probably could have died was 17. I was at home with my parents.
So when you were 17 years old?
Yeah.
And what's your age now?
I am 20.
Okay, so a few years ago, COVID, parents, Vegas.
I from a very small town in Nevada, and I moved to Vegas. Then I moved here.
So this was happening in that very small town in Nevada. And what happened?
It actually has a pretty big backstory of why
They always do, Luna. They
well, yeah.
do.
I went to high school, and I was figuring out things about myself. I'm trans and all these other things. My parents are very, very not accepting. My stepdad is violently homophobic.
This is not a good combination at all.
This is not. I fell into a really, really bad depression because I lived in a small town in the middle of nowhere. No one there's accepting. I guess at one point I just started to think maybe I should just stop trying to deal with all this. So on that day I thought I'm gonna go in my room, try and hang myself in there.
You try to hang yourself in your room. So leading up to this, so you were 17. At that point, you're figuring out.
I was sure because I started figuring out my identity in middle school.
I'm going to ask you a couple of questions probably along the way. And please understand, I'm a middle-aged white man, and I probably say things in dumb ways that are not intended to be offensive, but they could be, and that's not my goal. I appreciate you giving me that latitude. So when you were younger than that, like in this small town, is it a conservative town?
Yeah.
At what point do you present in certain ways or not?
Okay, so all the way until I go out to college is I always presented mask for my safety.
Masculine. Oh, so I'm learning here. So mask means masculine. Duh. Sean, fucking read a little bit. This is why people have probably had enough of me on this podcast. He's just not researching enough. So when you were in your room that day, the day that I imagine things finally culminate, you're in your room with a fucking noose, right?
It was actually a belt.
It was a belt. Okay, I stand corrected.
Same belt I used to this day.
You wear it on your.
I only owned one belt.
I wonder, this is where my mind goes, Luna. I'm like, how many people do I see walking around with belts on that may at one point use them to, you never know. Dude, if you're in Trader Joe's, just look for good tomatoes. Don't look at people's belts. It's not a thing. Was anybody home that day?
Yeah, I think it was just my mom that was home and maybe my little brothers.
Do you tie it up there? Do you get close or do you actually tie the thing around your neck?
I was committed. Like I had it around me. I was ready.
Do you know how people sometimes say they didn't want to die, they just wanted the pain to end? Not that those two are mutually exclusive, of course, but on that day, where were you with that or both? Neither?
It was more of I just don't want to be a burden because I felt like I was going to be a burden on my family.
And was the burden primarily due to you being trans?
Me being trans, yeah.
It's a pretty high suicide rate amongst the trans community, I believe.
It sadly is, yeah.
Yeah.
I've met a lot of people who have attempted.
So that was one of them where you said earlier, if something doesn't happen, I'm paraphrasing, it would have worked. What got in the way?
Oddly enough, the feeling of my heartbeat.
Oh.
I didn't try and do like a drop hanging. I just basically tried to strangulate myself, sort of like I could have stopped at any second.
Oh, so the belt is like in your hands?
It was tied up on something like low enough to the ground, like I could like sit down. It was not very well thought out.
So you hear your heartbeat and you just do. What do you do?
I'm just like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I know that one day, hopefully, I'll get out of this town. I'll get out of this like whole thing. Like I'll get out of the situation I'm in. And also the thought of my mom is gonna see me like this. As much as things are difficult with me and her, I didn't want her to see me like that.
So you stopped.
I stopped. Yeah.
Got back on with life.
Got back on. I started therapy after that since I thought, you know what, I might need a little bit of help.
Was that the first time you went to therapy?
Yeah. It was.
Did it help at all?
It helped quite a bit. I had a pretty nice therapist. He understood a lot of the things I was going through.
What was the first time you thought about ending your life?
Probably the first time I like thought of it was probably 16.
So about a year before?
Yeah. But it was mostly just like thoughts of, I just don't want to have this pain. It's not of like, I want to die yet. I was just like, how can I just get rid of this?
Is that when you started thinking about like method a little bit or no? Does that come later?
I didn't really think about methods until like around my first big attempt.
And so you go to the therapy, it helps some. How much later comes the second big attempt?
College. So when I'm like 19.
So like last year or a little more?
Yeah.
You were in college in Nevada, the one that's now bankrupted you. That doesn't help people's well-being, that's for sure.
No.
Was that similar or were there some differences other than you being, you're a couple years older?
I just like looked at my situation of I'm basically alone here because I had a couple friends, but they would always come and go. It's the attempt happened during the winter break when everyone went home except me. I was in the dorms alone. None of my support system was there.
Did you tend to hang out with other people who are trans?
My whole floor was trans. The entire floor was queer in some form. So like it's my college had like special interest floors. There's like a all women's floor. Basically, it's just trying to help people be with people they're comfortable with.
So you're on the floor, your friends are home last year, winter break, and you try how?
I stand by my dorm. There was a parking garage somewhat high up, 5 stories above ground. I go up there a lot to just like look at the skyline, but that time I was like, I can probably die up here. I can probably just go over the edge, and I thought that would work.
Sure. You didn't jump because if you did, you'd probably be in a wheelchair right now. So what stopped you from jumping?
I called the suicide hotline. They didn't help though. They just made me pissed off. So I didn't kill myself because I was too mad.
Oh, wow. All right. So the suicide hotline prevents a suicide in unintended ways.
They sure did.
Call the suicide hotline. We will make you so angry that you won't want to kill yourself. That's the new tagline.
Yeah.
Not your memoir title because we haven't gotten there yet, but we will probably. And again, just like last time, you got to go back and start like living life. Like you're going to go to sleep, you're going to wake up. I know it's probably quiet on campus, but right?
It was pretty quiet on campus. I went back to my dorm. I slept a lot because I didn't have a job at the time.
How is it different the second time than the first? Because I just not comparing, but the first one's like the first time that can be pretty like, whoa. This is the second time. Is there reasons behind it, in as much as you can put it into words, similar?
It was a lot more financial. I didn't have a job. I was broke. I tried to get a job. No one would ever take me. I just felt like no one else, I guess no one wants to try and help me get a job because like I tried. I fucking tried. I thought, you know what? Might as well just not even be here. I won't have to deal with all this debt and all the money I have to owe.
How did you survive?
A lot of cash from my parents.
So these are the same parents who don't.
These are the same ones because they didn't know at the time. But I always watched the news with them as a kid. And during Pride, it would be not fun to be in the same room with them.
What would they say?
There's one line that really stuck with me is my stepdad said, we should use all the cash we give to these people. He had not used a nicer word than you people, than like it's those people. Instead of that, we should just kill them. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna not deal with that.
Right. I'm pretty sure most people would be like, nah, I'm not being. But he found out.
He did in the last couple months.
So are you saying that your stepfather wants you dead?
He sort of changed a new leaf. He had one of his grandchildren come out as I guess lesbian, and then he got really angry over that, and that sort of dampened the whole. Oh yeah, Luna's trans because someone told him.
Do you talk?
I don't talk to him. I do talk to my mom sometimes.
Okay. How have you gotten from the second attempt a year and a half ago? I know you needed to leave Nevada, leave that school. You're in North Carolina. Like what has it been like since? Because here we are talking about suicide. So I imagine, like you said earlier, well, I don't imagine. You said you think about it sometimes.
I do think about it still. Definitely not as actively like I want to die. It's more of just still a lot of I wish I wasn't such a burden on people since that's a lot of my thing is I feel like a burden.
Do the people in which you live with feel that way? Do you feel that way towards them?
They absolutely adore me.
Well, what's not to adore, Luna?
I mean, it's just a lot of my self-doubt that I've
Yeah.
had since I was a kid.
What's your life like these days in somewhat new middle of nowhere, North Carolina?
I'm working at a job I used to do back in Nevada. I'm a shift lead at
Uh,
a restaurant at Taco Bell specifically because I've done that for like a couple years.
so you never spent time at a psych ward mental.
I have actually.
When was that?
Okay, so
Okay, hang on. Yeah.
I went through a breakup in college and it was really bad. The person I found out was cheating on me. So the breakup triggered me to self-harm again, since I did in the past. But that time I went to go see a crisis counselor and talk to my therapist, and they said you should talk to a place about intensive outpatient. They knew I was fine. I was not gonna hurt myself more. It was just a moment of weakness. I go to a appointment to talk about intensive outpatient, and then they lock me up. Anyway, I wasn't voluntarily committed. This was 6 months ago.
How long did you stay in the hospital?
4 days.
How did they justify locking you up? Do you know?
Because I had recent self-harm and they were worried about me, even though I had multiple therapists and a crisis counselor agree she's not a threat to herself.
Wow. So if they're not going to listen to them, what's the point of even having them? How was that? How were the 4 days?
First night was really rough. I cried the entire night. I probably was at my lowest, which says a lot because I was like, all of a sudden, I don't know when I'm gonna leave because they never said
No.
this is when you leave. We're gonna have you here and you cannot leave and they sent me to the back. I was lucky enough to that I didn't come in a suicidal episode, like in I like actually suicidal. So I got put in the ward for people who aren't in need of intensive help at the moment. So I actually had somewhat of a nice day, but it was not nice enough to I was involuntarily committed.
Sure.
I was in the nicer parts of yeah, it's with quotes in the nicer part of the psych ward.
Why did they let you out?
They saw they have no reason to hold me here. Honestly, some of the staff thought, why is she even here?
Right. Did they all call you she?
Yes. They respected me. Actually, it's when I was committed. I was lucky because one of the members of staff was also trans.
Sure.
So I got my search by her, which was nice because she understood. At that hospital, the rooms are gender specific, like, but if you're trans, you have either your own room or a room with another trans person.
Okay.
There was another trans person there. I got roomed with another trans person.
Did that work out?
Yeah, I was pretty good friends with her.
Would you have been put in the same room as a trans man?
If it was like it's like a trans man, then I would still be put with them.
Okay.
It's just because we're both trans. It doesn't really make sense, but
No.
it's the healthcare system. When does it ever make sense?
How many people know about that hospital stay? Did you tell your friends and anybody?
I told basically everyone I knew
Okay.
of what happened because it was unjust. It was totally unjust.
How many people did you tell about either of those attempts?
I've been a little open about them. So like basically, if you spend an extended time around me, I'll tell you about them. So like basically the people I worked with, if I worked at the time, my friends knew.
And in North Carolina, do you have, other than the people you cohabitate with, people to talk to about this stuff?
I just recently started therapy again.
Online or in person?
It's online.
BetterHelp?
No, I do not trust BetterHelp. I have heard that it's helped people, but I'm scared because I'm on Medicaid.
You're on what? Medicaid?
Yeah. So I'm like, I have to make sure they are in network or else I cannot afford it.
So did this therapist or another therapist along the way ever diagnose you with something you think is correct?
My diagnosis have been very hotly debated among the therapists I've been with because in college I went to one for a while and she was like, it could be a couple things. It sounds a lot like borderline personality disorder, but she said I won't diagnose you with that because it has a very large stigma. And then I was like, I don't care if it has a stigma. I want to get help and I need to know what is going on.
Well, what is going on?
That's a really good question.
We don't know the answer just yet, perhaps.
Definitely a lot of like, if I have any sort of rejection, I've been trying to cope with it myself.
Do you ever wish either of those attempts had been successful?
Right now, no.
Tomorrow, you don't know.
I don't know.
Yesterday,
I had a pretty bad day at work, so maybe, yeah.
what do you do in your life, if anything, that helps at all?
I distract myself a lot. Like I play video games to distract myself from really depressing thoughts.
What's your favorite video game?
Right now, it's The Sims, but like it changes a lot.
Cool. When's your birthday?
It's in November 9th.
Sagittarius?
Scorpio.
Scorpio. Oh, all right, Scorpio. So what's the likelihood you're going to be around then?
I give it pretty good odds. It's the person I'm with. She really tries to keep the house safe for me. There is no sharp things in the room, blades or anything. We do not allow them in the room with me. And she's just always there. And I don't want to leave her alone in this world.
When you've gone through what you've gone through, the attempts and the dealing with all the stuff, are there any myths or misconceptions you would like to clearly and loudly say that is bullshit?
One is that we're always miserable. Like as us as trans people and also people who are mentally ill. We're not always miserable. We do have good times. Some might be more rare. One thing is that I firmly think there is always hope.
When you've listened to the podcast, you said a couple years ago, and then you recently started listening again. Is there ever something you want me to bring up that I don't bring up that you think is important? That you're like, why doesn't he ask about such and such?
I think you are actually pretty good at covering things. One thing would be nice to hear more about is like sexuality of people, but like that's a very personal thing, and it's not up to you.
Well, yeah, it's a little out of my control. I mean, it's interesting. I've
Yeah.
had I don't know how many conversations with people who are trans, but not a lot. Given the high stakes and maybe that's one of the reasons is they don't have the liberty or luxury of always
Yeah.
having, I don't know, who knows why. Yeah, I think that's important. If you're hearing this, please, I'm around to talk. If you want, if you trust me, if you think I'm not a jerk, come on. And you're in the space to do it, of course. So pink and purple pill. Here we go. So I give Luna a pill. She takes it if she chooses to, goes to sleep quietly, does not wake up. Nobody thinks it's a suicide. That's how the pill works. She can take it. She can put it away somewhere. She can discard it. That is the question. Luna, putting you on the spot.
I have been trying to think about this like the past week of
Oh,
what would I do? The best parts of me say to throw it away, but I would keep it and save it.
would you tell your partner that you have it?
And she is going to hear about this episode.
All right, well, let her know it's not real, please. So do you think you'll listen to it? I know sometimes it's hard for people to hear their voices or whatever else.
I might listen to it at least once.
But you'll tell your partner about it.
Yeah, she knows about it, and she asked when it'll be out.
And she'll listen. Do you think you'll share it with others? Hey, maybe you one day will share it with your stepfather.
Maybe one day he'll hear it.
I don't think I would share it with that person in my life. I can't imagine, but maybe, who knows?
Maybe one day he'll stumble upon it.
Maybe. I mean, it's
highly unlikely, but
pretty hard to find unless you have a real goal of finding something like this, I think. But yeah, somewhere in Nevada, some tumbleweed going by. What else do you want to share? I feel like there's a lot that I want to make sure we cover. And
I had a really bad ex, like an abuser.
is that the one you were talking about in college?
No, that was actually when I was 16. He was really bad. His name was Lance.
Can we use that name in the podcast?
Yeah, he can know that I remember the things he did to me, and I will never be able to forget it. That's a whole story. Like that can be a whole other thing.
Maybe a different podcast. Who knows?
Maybe a different one. I have tried to podcast.
You've tried to podcast. What was it about?
It's the one I tried to do was very much still in the conceptual phase, but we actually had art done. We had channels made. We just never recorded, and it was called Trans Girls Are Valid. It's just a podcast about being trans.
You never recorded an episode. Yeah, it's hard.
No, it fell by the wayside since it was like 4 people trying to plan a schedule.
Right. That's a lot of chefs in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Or I think I misused that expression, but it doesn't matter. What would it, I know it was just in this sort of conceptual phase. It was going to be you talking with the 3 others or talking with one other person about some things.
It was gonna be me and a couple other trans people of talking about what it's like being trans. We just chose the name of Trans Girls specifically because like most of us were trans girls.
Makes complete sense. And you're valid. Just going by the
We
title.
are.
You are.
All trans people are valid in my eyes.
Valid in my eyes. Do we have a memoir title, Luna?
Oh my!
Can't stop me. You can't.
I have tried to write things. Maybe one day it's on shelves. You'll see a memoir by the name of Valid in My Eyes.
Valid in my eyes. You can work out the subtitle with your publisher. Is that it? Did we cover it?
I mean, we could dive into the past traumas, but that would be a long talk.
Right.
Involving a lot of triggering topics.
Right. There were traumas.
There was a lot.
What's the rest of your day like?
I'm gonna go sleep since I have not slept yet.
Wait, you've been up since last night?
Yeah. I was off of work at 1.
Oh, okay. You stay up.
I work nights. I try to sleep. Have a hard time with it.
Same.
Yeah.
Do you take meds to sleep or meds for anything else?
I used to take meds. Don't take them anymore.
So how do you sleep? And I know that might have been referring to other things, but sleep stuff.
I don't know. I just pass out.
I hope you can.
I can because I've not drinking my energy drink yet, so.
I see. Well, thanks for talking. I appreciate it.
Yeah. It was really nice to talk.
I feel the same way. Let's go back to our super exciting lives, Luna. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you opening up.
Thank you.
All right, Luna. Have a decent day.
Yeah.
Bye. As always, thanks so much for listening and all of your support, and special thanks to Luna in North Carolina. Thanks, Luna. If you are a suicide attempt survivor and you'd like to talk, please reach out. hello@suicidenoted.com, on Facebook or X, at least for now, @Suicide Noted. Check the show notes to learn more about this podcast and leave us a rating and or review if you would. It really helps people find the podcast. Thanks so much for that. And that is all for episode number 228. Stay strong. Do the best you can. I will talk to you